Today is our hotel perspective, and we have some wonderful guests today, and we hope that you will enjoy. Next slide, please. So I just want to introduce our organizational team. My name is Carmen Smith. I am the Senior Manager of Travel and Events for ICF. We also have Andrew Wilcox, Tanya Faribault, and Carly Van Dyke, who are part of the ICF team. Charlie Grappone is our team leader, sales for Citizen M Hotels. Roman Neumeister, he's the travel officer for OSCE in Vienna. And Kathy Rigby, she's a program manager for travel risk and safety at the CFA Institute. We'd like to go over some housekeeping items with you. This session is being recorded. You actually have been muted, but please keep your phones on mute. We don't want to interrupt our speakers today. Please keep your cameras off, and then ask all questions in the chat box. We will answer those questions at the end of today's call, and any questions not answered will be posted on the GBTA Return to Travel Think Tank site. Well, our first speakers today, Jody Fernandez. Jody has been with Hyatt Hotels for 14 years. She is the Director of Global Enterprise Account Team, which oversees Hyatt's top producing accounts in both meetings and corporate travel business. Jody has been a part of the global diversity and inclusion, sustainability, and well-being. She feels that the topics that we're talking about today are highly elevated prior to COVID, and it's her goal to keep this critical messaging relevant and moving. Charlie Grappone, who is part of our organizational team, and we're actually happy to have Charlie as one of our speakers today. Charlie has been in the hotel industry or hospitality industry for 15 plus years, and he has worked for some great companies such as IHG, Marriott, Starwood, etc. But Charlie has worked his way up the ranks. He started out as a bellboy for a small Hampton hotel in 2005 and is currently in his current position as the team leader sales. Charlie and his team are responsible for corporate sales success of all Citizen M hotels worldwide. And then Mike Halligan. Mike is going to bring a different perspective. Mike has had a 33-year career in the environmental health and safety, as well as building, fire, life safety, and security industry. He is a subject matter expert in the areas of implementing prescriptive and performance-based safety solutions into historic buildings and sites, university facilities, stadiums, and large-scale special events such as Olympic venues, hospitality resorts, and mixed-use development. His current portfolio of projects includes mixed-use high-rise hotel, specialty warehouse, large-scale electric and water utilities, parking structures, airport operations, and factory-built energy storage building. And he will be bringing a different perspective, as mentioned, regarding our hotels. And at this time, I would like to introduce to you Jody Fernandez, Director of Global Sales for Hyatt Hotels. All yours, Jody.
All right, thank you, Carmen, for such a nice start and warm welcome. I was delighted to be asked to speak with all of you today and give the large brand perspective and how Hyatt views our path forward, and with well-being in mind and at the heart of everything that we do. I think that many of us on this call have probably endured the sadness of 9/11 together, the financial crisis of 2008, and now this is something very different altogether and very long. It's taking a while to go through. It's still a highly fluid situation, as we all know, and I certainly look forward to it being in the rear view, and I know that a lot of you do as well. Our words to live by here at Hyatt are: we care for people so they can be their best. And I feel as though we had a crystal ball a couple of years ago when we decided to commit to that as part of our culture, because it has never felt truer through these challenging times. and how we're treating each other, how we're treating our guests. And it's truly, again, at the heart of what we're doing every day through these tough times. Next slide, please. So when I was asked to represent the large brand perspective today, I did laugh a little bit, and I'll let you in on a little bit of a Hyatt secret. We have this joke at Hyatt that we continuously just kind of punch above our weight in size because we're significantly smaller than our top competitors at Marriott and Hilton. But our clients don't see it that way, and we don't see it that way. And that's what's great. And we love our number 3 spot, and we're in very good company up there. So happy here to be representing that large brand perspective and where we think we're going to be going with this next. So the question on the table in everyone's mind is, how do we operate a company of this size through a pandemic and reach success on the other end of it? And I think part of that is that we're extremely confident in our 18 brands, what we offer our customer as far as product and service. It's a very sound plan. And, we're on that luxury level of everything that we do, even at our economy brands. So if you're traveling with your daughter for her weekend soccer tournament, you're probably enjoying something like our Hyatt Place or Hyatt House. And then if you're CEO and you decide to have your CEO roundtable, you're selecting our Park Hyatt New York. And then in the middle, with our lifestyle brands and our very traditional brands that our company was built on, like Regency, we have everything in the middle. So we're really grounded in that. And it's our plan, and we really stick to that and hold true. So next slide, please. We'll continue to grow through the pandemic, and I think that our industry will as well, competitors included. We have hundreds of hotels in the pipeline with a strong focus on leisure and lifestyle, especially right now, because that's what we've have seen return first to market. It's not our business travelers who are out there right now. It's, the everyday folks just like you and me trying to take a trip here and there. And we're really going to be catering to that for the moment. So I don't share this as a Hyatt commercial. I'm not supposed to be doing that today. It's really and truly a big picture industry perspective, but I think that our pipeline just shows a sign of hope and positivity for all of us, that when we're ready to get out there again, to start traveling and meeting, that all of our hotels and competitors are going to have something for you in that pipeline that's new and different. So just as a few quick examples, some hotels that Hyatt opened this summer would be our Miraval Berkshires. It's the 3rd Miraval. And boy, do we all need Miraval in our lives right now. This is our Life and Balance resort concept. It is a digital free environment, no phones allowed. And if you're caught, we do ask you to put that back in your pocket because we want to keep the environment really true. And then our Park Hyatt Auckland in New Zealand. Hyatt is new to the country, so that was a big opening in, our luxury brand, which is really exciting. And then here at home in the States, we've got our Grand Hyatt Nashville, which is, I know, a huge hurrah for many of our association and meeting and event planners who might be on the phone with us today. They've been asking for a big box Hyatt there for a long time. So next slide, please. So the next couple of topics here that I'm going to cover are pretty big, and I'm on the clock, and a salesperson does not usually do well on the clock, but I'm going to try. Big topics that we could probably cover an hour each of. I'm going to do it in 15 minutes. So my contact information is on the last slide today. You can reach out to me. You can call your Hyatt sales director, and we can continue the conversation later. But I'll start with our global care and cleanliness commitment because this is really at the heart of what we do right now. I certainly, as a salesperson, never knew that I would know so much about cleaning and commitments and how to survive a pandemic, but yet here I am. So we're all learning something new every day. Our approach was not first to market. We knew the seriousness and the complexity of this from the beginning was going to be big, and that once we took it to market, it was going to need to be global and consistent, or it just wasn't going to work, and we weren't going to be able to instill the confidence in our properties that our clients and travelers needed to see and hear. So everything that we do at Hyatt is grounded in empathy. So we spoke to the experts, we spoke to our customers, and we listened first and then developed our plan. Next slide, please. We started with how can we help you? How can we make the travelers feel better? And then what is travel going to look like when it restarts? I know myself, I haven't been in a hotel in a while, which is pretty strange coming from somebody who takes about 26 trips a year, right? And that's probably nothing compared to some of our road warriors. So things are going to be different in this new world, and we're all going to need to be ready for it. We knew that colleague and guest safety and their peace of mind had to be first, because we all need to be confident in this or it just wasn't going to work. Next slide, please. We met with experts in the field and decided to partner with the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, or GBAC. And we said, we're going to need a plan. And how do we do this? You're the experts. Take us through it. And they developed a 20-point accreditation plan for every one of our hotels. And then they become GBAC Star. All of our colleagues take a daily temperature check upon arrival. Every property has a trained hygiene manager who oversees this plan from A to Z. And again, keeping that consistency. And every one of our employees needed to be retrained. So it didn't matter if you were a Hyatt employee who was with us for 30 years, or if you started yesterday, you're being reoriented. Oh, sorry, I'm getting some background noise there. I think it's Evan Koppel. Sorry to call you out, Evan, but I need you to mute there, buddy. So our teams needed to be completely re-educated on their first day, and so that we could keep up that level of consistency. Next slide, please. Oh, and I should add too, so in the final phase of this, well, I shouldn't say final because I don't know that any of this is going to be final. It's going to be ongoing for a really long time, but the newest news about our global care and cleanliness commitment is that we've now partnered with Deloitte, who's going to be our third-party consultant, and they'll be running our quality control checks and audits, so that once these plans are rolled out and our buildings are open, and the ones that are already open are running them consistently, Deloitte is going to be reporting back and giving a sort of report card. So based on the growing information about masks and their containment in the virus, Hyatt is now a mask mandatory brand. And we felt that this would make everyone feel more comfortable, our colleagues, our travelers, and would help us be able to do business together at a more comfortable level and for longer periods of time, and make everybody feel better about interacting. And I am going to brag here a little bit because our hotels are working so hard at this. It's not easy, as I'm sure you all know, and we just were recognized in Forbes as having the highest score in health and social distancing standards, and also in our flexibility to do business together in a policy of pandemic. So again, who would have thought we'd be talking about policies of pandemic in hotels, but here we are. So before COVID and the great pause, we were on to really great things in our industry. It wasn't just Hyatt. I mean, it was a lot of brands, and I know you're gonna hear it from Charlie too. I have a lot of respect for the Citizen M brand as well. Health, well-being, self-care, global diversity and inclusion. And it really felt as though when this all came crashing down that we were going to have to completely switch gears and abandon, these great programs that we had put into place and things that we were really living and breathing. But, the dust has settled. We're not through it, but we are starting to see hope and that light at the end of the tunnel to say, you know, we can still be ourselves. We're going to bob, we're going to weave, we're going to do what we need to do, but we can really still stay true to ourselves in these areas. So fitness equipment is being spaced and removed where it needs to be. We've leaned on our partners at Exhale to create more on-demand in-room programming so you can stay in your guest room and work out if you want. Rooftops are being turned into yoga studios. I, for one, hope that's something that just stays forever. I think it's amazing. And then we already had a partnership with Headspace and World of Hyatt. And that just now seems more relevant than ever because I know we all need to unplug and step away from things for a little while. I just took a little sigh of relief talking about it. So all of these things are very much still at the heart of what we're doing in our hotels and trying to bring that to our guests and their travel experiences. You know, technology that we weren't using before, it existed, but we weren't, you know, really engaged with it, maybe because we didn't have to be. That's getting moved to the forefront now. Things like mobile check-in and check-out, it's being used like crazy in our hotels. Keyless entry, we now have 500 Hyatts with keyless entry and our guests are asking for more. So that's going to be something that is going to continue to develop. We're doing knock and drop deliveries so that our guests can text us what they need. We'll take it up to the room, knock, leave it on the door. You get it when you're ready. And we call this level of service less contact, more care. So you're still getting all of that great service inside of a hotel, but we're removing those contact and touch points. Housekeeping. This is something that has always been in the background, right? We never really talked about housekeeping, and now all of a sudden everybody wants to know about it. I know I do. So we're scheduling housekeeping visits now, and that's at the convenience of our guests. We're allowing rooms to rest in between guests whenever possible. Our cleaning policies are stricter than ever. And it's not on this slide, but I have to add that we did leave our in-room coffee makers in. I didn't realize how important this was to all of you, but apparently it is. We asked and we got a lot of feedback. So while a lot of items in your guest room that couldn't be sanitized maybe have been removed for a little while, the coffee makers are there. So we can all rest easy on that note. Next slide, please. Okay, so know before you go. The communication is going to be critical here, and know before you go was always known as something that was for our meeting participants. But we've asked our hotels now to create one of these for every style of guest. So a meeting participant, even our meeting and event planners, you're going to receive a know before you go before your hotel tour so that you know what to expect when you arrive. Things are going to look and feel a little different, and we want you to feel prepared and welcomed. We're going to have them for our business and leisure travelers as well, and even wedding guests. Next slide, please. Thanks. And signs everywhere, signs. We're all doing it. We're all seeing it. Hyatt is no different. I just love the creativity that we're starting to see from hotels that really give you a local sense of place. They make you feel like, okay, yep, I'm in Texas, here I am, or yep, here I am on a dance floor. How do I handle this situation with social distancing? The one that's in the upper left-hand corner, I even sent to our school superintendent. I thought the 3 W's were so cute for school-age children. So a lot of creativity here with signage. And then our meetings and events participants and our planners, things are going to look a little different for you, especially that first time that you're at a meeting. The tables are going to be really clean. Again, just like a guest room, anything that can't be sanitized and cleaned over and over again, it's just not going to be there. So the tables are going to be very clean and crisp looking. We're going to keep doors open for circulation whenever possible, and also for less contact points. Water stations are going to be serviced. You're not going to see the pictures that used to be there anymore. We're going to have guidance to manage your guest flow. We're going to help with the elevators. So there's going to be a lot involved, and you're going to see a high level of service and care in that. So the food, though, that you expect at a Hyatt is definitely not changed. It's so good. I was scared that buffets were going to go away forever, but they're not. They're definitely here to stay. We carefully source and thoughtfully serve at Hyatt. And the breakfast or buffets in general, this is a picture of a breakfast buffet. It's going to be behind plexiglass and somebody's going to serve it to you rather than each person reaching for their own. And then the evening reception picture, expect to see a lot of individual serving sizes. And this is shot actually from the chef's perspective. So this would be somebody taking it and handing it to you over plexiglass. But the presentation is beautiful and certainly not a step skipped there. Next slide, please. So healthy, safe, sustainable, and local. This has always been our mantra at Hyatt, and we're not going anywhere. We source things like homemade ice cream pops from local vendors, and we love mason jars, and they're not going to go away, by the way, so I really hope you like those. Those give visual cues to our guests and travelers when something has a lid on it, that it's secure, it's untouched. So without even saying, hey, this is clean, it's that visual cue we all need to feel safe. And, we appreciate that it's been sealed. And then you can still do welcome amenities, and they can be done in a really nice recyclable box that's going to be wrapped tight and left in a guest room or maybe handed to a guest at check-in. So before I turn things over to Charlie, I wanted to leave you with the current information and education at your fingertips. Everything that I talked to you about today is a lot, and we've really just scratched the surface, but you can visit Hyatt.com or your World of Hyatt app anytime. And all of this information is kept up to date. It has changed a lot since March, and it's going to continue to change and evolve. So it's not something I think that you can visit once. You have to kind of keep going back to say, okay, what's new and what's happening? And then my information is on the right. So if anyone wants to continue the conversation, we can definitely do that. Last slide, please. I am just going to leave you with safety first and well-being always. And everyone on this call is important to our business and how we're going to be able to restart our hotels. So we thank you for everything that you're doing from your home offices every day, and look forward to welcoming you back. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie Grappone with Citizen M.
Thank you, Jody. Really appreciate it. And kudos to everything you guys are doing at Hyatt. Really bravo. Really, really well done. I've definitely kept up with you guys in the news, and it's incredible to see. So good job. And thank you for passing the mic, so to speak, over to me. I'm really excited to present to everybody today on a topic that I and Citizen M, as well as Jody and Mike later on in this call, we all feel is very important in today's current landscape. So for those that don't know me, as Carmen mentioned, I'm Charlie Grappone, and I lead our sales team here in the U.S. And today I'm excited to go over with all of you very briefly a description of Citizen M. As I'd imagine many of you listening in may not have heard of us before. We're still growing, but more importantly, I'm going to mainly focus on how Citizen M had kind of in a way created a pandemic-proof hotel concept without realizing it until the pandemic we're all in now popped up. I also want to mention, as many of my clients have noted to me personally, as well as my team, how great it is to hear some feel-good stories about how Citizen M has managed things through the pandemic. I'm going to go into what the future holds for us at Citizen M. And then, of course, after Mike speaks at the end of our call, we're going to leave some time, hopefully, for Q&A. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, let's briefly introduce Citizen M to all of you out there in work from homeland. Next slide, please. So Citizen M was born in 2008 with our first hotel at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. Our founder, Ratan Chadha, owned a clothing line, and I'm really going to condense this story as Jody tried to do as well. He owned a clothing line called Mex before he got into the hotel industry. And he noticed that many of his employees noted to him over the years how frustrating they found traveling for business. So this was due to things like being charged for Wi-Fi or waiting on a long line to check in, poorly designed hotel rooms, poor service, maybe, things we can all really relate to. So to keep this brief, Ratan took these criticisms and solved them. And that's essentially how Citizen M came to be. Next slide, please. He created what we call affordable luxury, as our hotels have very inspiring living rooms, not lobbies, for people to gather and work or enjoy a coffee or cocktail. This goes for our Society M meeting spaces as well, which you see in the top right photo here. He made F&B available all day long for those weary business travelers arriving all hours of the night. rooftop bars where any and all are welcome, and you don't need to pay an exorbitant cover charge just to get in. And of course, huge beds in every room that are extremely comfortable, among many other amenities we'd like to think all travelers would appreciate. Next slide, please. So as of next week, actually, Citizen M will have 21 hotels worldwide. We're looking forward to the day that we catch up to Hyatt, which, if projections stay the way they are now, will grow to around 40 by 2023. And fingers crossed, 100 by 2028. So it's an exciting time to be a citizen. Next slide, please. So now that you all have an idea of what Citizen M is, let's go into our main topic, which is what I'm sure you're all curious about my mentioning earlier, which is how Citizen M always kind of was and is a pandemic-proof hotel model. So to best explain this, I went over a variety of things that I thought of doing on this call. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our the young lady behind the slides, Carly, if you wouldn't mind playing this 2-minute video I included for our listeners.
A pandemic-proof hotel, that would be ideal. Luckily for you, mobile citizen, Citizen M is just that. We could be smug, so we planned it. But the truth is, we accidentally got it just right. Many great things were invented by mistake. Instead of pokey, lifeless lobbies, we built open-plan living rooms, great for social distancing. We always had ultra-efficient small teams, around 5 or 6 people per shift. Today, our guests see the same friendly faces frequently. Step into our bedrooms and fill your lungs with independently ventilated 100% fresh air. Never recirculated, unlike many other hotels. You'll notice no bedspreads or carpets, just easy to clean, innovative materials. We have just one room type, so introducing new hygiene standards was effortless. There's no need to touch wall switches or the TV remote control. One mood pad does it all. We disinfect it after every stay. Or use your own device and control the entire room experience via the Citizen M app. Our app is global, free, and the fairy godmother to your contactless experience. Use it to check in. Our approach to food has always been no nonsense. It's deliciously healthy, ready for grab and go, and available 24/7. Delicious barista-made coffee and craft cocktails are still served around the clock at Canteen M. We already had impeccable hygiene standards. We just threw in some reassuring extras, like hand sanitizing stations and safety routes. Electrostatic sprayers are also on hand to disinfect luggage, public areas and guest rooms. Our opt-in cleaning service for short stay means no one will enter your room unless you ask. To limit interaction even more, all our hotels are cashless, with new house rules for extra safety. We guarantee disinfected bed linen and towels. Still unsure about travelling? Don't worry. Our individual bookings are now fully flexible. You can cancel up to 24 hours before arrival at any Citizen M hotel for free until the end of 2020. Once you've finished your contactless stay with us, use the app to check out. We can't wait to welcome you back soon, mobile citizen. Until then, stay safe. Smart luxury for the people.
Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed that, and let's go a bit further in depth on all that was just mentioned. So if we, right here on this slide is perfect. Thank you, Carly. So let's go back in time to late February, early March for a moment, as we at Citizen M decided not to focus on what we couldn't do because of the pandemic, but what we could do. So one of those things that we pushed to the forefront was our app, which we had released at the end of last year with honestly minimal functionality, such as making a booking, checking city guides, and things like that at that time. Now, Citizen M actually already has iPad minis, for those that don't know, in every room, as you saw in the video, to control the room functions, like lighting, temperature control, putting on a movie, changing channels, streaming content, and many other things to eliminate a ton of touch points. Now you don't even need to touch that. You don't need to touch that iPad anymore, as you could do all those things from the app. Citizen M also always had kiosks, like at the airport, for rapid check-in and out. And we actually have had a mobile check-in since 2018. But even more so now, you no longer need to touch the kiosk. You have the app, We have room keys, which are in card form, and now you can use your phone as the key. And through the app's chat function, guests will soon be able to request extra pillows and toiletries, buy books, gin and tonics, toothpaste, schedule wake-up calls, view and order menus, and I mean, even if they want to, they could register a complaint, but we certainly hope they don't. Next slide, please. So Citizen M has always kind of shied away from doing things the traditional brands do, like have doormen as a small example, or offer room service as another example. But in today's new world, we did realize we had to be a bit flexible there. So now you can opt into housekeeping service with the app, and you can also order breakfast from the app, which will either be waiting for you in a to-go bag downstairs in the living room to take, or can be brought up to your room and left outside the door. We've also never had many layers of bedspreads, and all of our rooms have hardwood floors, so of course that means less germ collection. And as you saw in the video, all rooms actually have their own independently ventilated air, whereas many hotels have air from the rooms all kind of filtering amongst one another. So that really puts a lot of travelers' minds at ease these days. Some other permanent changes we've made, not noted here or in the video, I don't think, are that we are now completely cashless worldwide. We've placed hand sanitizer all over our hotels. We've added clear social distancing signs and set safety routes. We've purchased electrostatic sprayers to disinfect luggage and public areas. All F&B is completely sealed when it's served to you. And of course, we've set capacity limits for elevators, and we do require masks at all of our hotels while inside. Next slide, please. Now, if I've piqued your interest even minimally, go ahead and take the time to scan this QR code with your phone right now and download our app and give it a spin. I honestly find it quite fun and quirky, like most things Citizen M. And if you really want to make me happy, go ahead and book your next stay with us in there and let me know about it so that I can alert our team we have a new citizen heading their way. Next slide, please. So let's get into something that I think we all need during a time like this, especially if you're based here in the United States with everything going on right now. And that's some feel-good stories from Citizen M, which I couldn't be more proud, quite honestly, to share with all of you today. So if we can jump to the next slide, please, Carly. So you're all aware, we actually have kept all of our hotels open throughout the pandemic, with the only exceptions being in the UK, where we were actually forced to close by government mandate. However, as you can imagine, many of our hotels remained largely empty despite being open. That being said, we of course also knew that so many having to quarantine or go to the hospital and having to largely be alone there, or the elderly in nursing homes, you name it. Many of us can easily feel disconnected, lonely, depressed, etc. And it takes a toll on mental health. So we donated over 1,000 of our iPads to people like this around the world so they could stay connected with one another. Next slide, please. And, you know, it's funny that we can so easily feel disconnected at a time like this when we're all actually facing this crisis all at once together. And at Citizen M, again, for those of you that may not know, we have ambassadors, not front desk agents or guest service representatives. We empower our employees, and we have our brand ambassadors. So what we did was we took every email address of every person that has ever stayed with us in the past or will in the future, and we emailed them what we called an ambassador newsletter, which was really just a friendly hello and to say we can't wait to have you back with us. We also made all bookings fully flexible through the end of this year, as we of course understand that many are just plain worried about travel right now. So we made it so you can cancel with no charge. Lastly, and something I'm really most proud of, especially for our ambassadors around the world, we maintained 100% of our workforce through this whole thing, which I know my own personal clients have let me know is such a nice human touch story, so to speak, when there is so much, I mean, quite honestly, unfortunate news out there right now. I can see we're already on the next slide. We launched what we called a Micro Heroes campaign just a few weeks ago, actually. And you can see here we received some press in Denmark for it, where people like me and you can actually nominate those we feel have gone above and beyond to help people in need during this pandemic for a free stay at any of our hotels around the world. So as an example, you can see here someone nominated her sister for being a hardworking police officer on the front lines during the pandemic. So we're really just trying to find ways to stay connected in positive spirits and helpful during these crazy times. Next slide, please. So where does Citizen M go from here? What do we have in store next? Let's just go to the next slide right now, please. So around Memorial Day weekend a few months ago, when we were still at the height of the pandemic in many places in the United States, we actually opened a brand new hotel, and our first on the West Coast in Seattle. Soon we're going to be launching a new corporate subscription type model for those for some to take advantage of, and I'm one of these people that want to get out and work from our spacious hotels, maybe a couple of times a week or a month. And we'll be offering some perks, of course, for people that want to try this out. And then lastly, we're actually opening 2 more brand new hotels in the next 2 weeks, which will be it for us for openings until next year, in 2 brand new cities for us. So those are our nation's capital. Washington, D.C. opens on the 27th, so 1 week from today, while Geneva, Switzerland comes right after on September 1st. Next slide, please. Now, moving on to next year, we have even more in store in terms of our growth. And most of it is right here in the United States, which is really exciting, as most of our hotels currently are still in Europe, where we started our journey. So in addition to DC and Geneva, we have LA Downtown opening first next year in May. Then we have 2 of our 3 upcoming openings in Miami coming next year. One in Brickell and the other in a brand new complex of retail, hotels, residential, office, you name it, called the Miami World Center. We're opening our 4th of what will eventually be 6 Paris hotels coming by Champs-Élysées in June. We have San Francisco Union Square on deck for the end of the year. Next year, followed by our 2nd in DC coming in the Noma neighborhood to close things out. Next slide, please. So, of course, my main point here today, folks, was not Citizen M and its openings or its concept or anything like that. I really wanted to get across the efforts we've made to make all of you in the travel community listening in, your travelers, and of course, just society at large in whole, feel safe during such uncertain times. We're ready to welcome our guests back when they are comfortable to come to us, and I'm happy to send any and all of you more information on this if you'd like. I also noticed in the chat window, I will share that video that I played. I'm glad all of you enjoyed it. So thank you again to Carmen, the rest of the organizational committee. Thank you to all those listening in. I hope you found this informative and helpful. And with that, I will turn it over to Mike Halligan.
Thank you, Charlie and Jody, for your presentations. As mentioned earlier on, my perspective is a little different. I don't operate hotels, but I have a lot of hotel clients with UL, where we go in and conduct audits and inspections for. Sometimes it's just one segment of safety. Sometimes it's the entire palette of safety-related items that a hotel is concerned with. And my perspective today, or my role today, is really to not be a commercial so much for UL, but to help the travel industry, to help the hospitality industry as they look for partners for third-party audits. Some of the things to consider. Also share some of the stories we've seen as we've looked at different buildings around the globe here in the last 6 months to a year. Before a pandemic, now that we're in this pandemic, and the response. And the good news is I think I'll stick to my time, because you've heard a lot of the things from Jody and from Charlie already. Large hotel or small hotel chains, they're all looking at the same things and responding to how to keep their associates healthy and safe in the workplace, but also how to keep the guests, reassure the guests that it's safe to sleep in the properties that they manage. So really, I want to talk about how do we readjust from where we were a year ago to where we are now when it comes to the safe operations of hotels and workspaces in those locations, whether it be for the sleeping rooms or be for meeting planners and event planners in the meeting and ballrooms of hotels. Next slide, please. Again, this is really what we're here to do, is how do we reassure staff and the clients it's safe to return to your location. Next slide. So any program, whether it's UL, Safe to Sleep, or others, really that you want to make sure that as you're reopening your doors, or like Citizen M, who never closed their doors, Uh, are you really looking at the things that you need to, and are you incorporating the right teams of people in your properties or at your corporate level to put together a return to your location program, a safe to sleep program for each individual location, whether you've got 21 or you've got 2,100 around the world. You really want to make sure you've got input from the corporate level, from operations people, from the legal side, HR, facilities people, security, your EHS and food safety group, even your building inspections teams. And really, there's four components to that. And as we heard from the first two speakers, it's really about healthy buildings. Are we putting our associates back into those locations where they'll be safe to work, where they won't be exposed to viruses or any of the other illnesses that they could be exposed to in the workplace? The ventilation systems, we heard about that from the Citizen M video here just a few minutes ago. How are they set up? How are they being maintained? How are the filters being changed? Just in my circle of friends here in my community, they all came and said, well, what's a HEPA filter? 6 months ago, the world did not really know what a HEPA filter was unless you were in the engineering group or the facilities group for a building. Now the world knows what a HEPA filter is. And I had one of my neighbors who was getting ready to go on just a weekend trip, not far from her home here. She said, I see that they changed their HEPA filters. What does that mean? Do they have to come into my room to do that? And so even though the world has heard of a HEPA filter, they really don't know what it is that does, other than supposedly take particles out of the air. But how you convey that information, how you take that and turn it into your marketing efforts to reassure the people in your building, the workers as well as the guests, that the HEPA filters are in place, they're doing their job, there's a maintenance program that goes with it. That kind of ties into the occupational safety side of what we're talking about. Are you doing all you can to keep your workers safe? What we know from the many inspections we do around the world in buildings, whether it be hospitality related or stadiums or mixed use office buildings, we know that when people aren't happy, when they're not content, they start to complain and bring up safety issues. So you want to make sure in your Safe to Sleep campaign that you've looked at all the elements from an occupational safety perspective, from an EHS perspective. Are you doing everything you should be doing to reduce the risk of exposure? That includes the upkeep of facilities, all the things that we're doing to create social distancing and barriers between your frontline staff and guests that are coming in, mask mandates, how you serve food, how your staff interacts with people coming to that building. It's a large effort, not only on the operations side, but also from a training side. Are you getting your training materials out? How are you measuring success of the training? I think Jody had talked about Hyatt uses a third-party auditor to go out and verify on property. Are things going as well as we expected from the corporate level? That's an important component. You want to see if your training program has been delivered, that's one thing, but is it being embraced in the field? Are housekeeping using the personal protective equipment that you've issued to them correctly? Are people wearing masks in public spaces correctly? Is there enforcement of the social distancing requirements that you've trained your staff on? So again, you want to make sure that from an occupational safety standpoint, you're covering your bases. Both presentations earlier talked about food safety. This has been a big component of our response to Safe to Sleep on a global scale. I live about 6 hours from Las Vegas, and I was just down there visiting a friend a few weeks ago. And normally you would have your option of so many buffets to go to, but we've reimagined how buffets are served. Instead of going through and putting your own food on your plate, now it's being served to you. You can point, you can show what it is. But what was interesting in one of the restaurants we went to for lunch one day is they did have a buffet. And they had all of the safety procedures put in place. They had barriers. You could point to your food. Someone would plate it for you and hand it over to you. But part of that plan fell apart when people that had children in their arms or they were holding them, they would reach over the barrier and kind of stick their face over to smell what was going on. So they didn't really implement their food safety program completely. A lot more than food safety that, and I'll talk more about some of the observations we've seen in a later slide. And then last is life safety and security as far as the 4 components. We worked with one property, and they said, well, why do we really have to have the life safety and security part of the audit, or we'll consider the building code and the fire code reviews. But you heard about that in, I think it was Jody's presentation, where they've started to look at rooftops and more exercise areas up to a rooftop. Those can all be done, and they can be done to comply with building codes and fire codes safely. But what we've seen in some locations is they've moved some of their exercise equipment from their spas or their gyms out into other areas, and they've obstructed some of the exit routes. I've looked at one hotel, or excuse me, one office building that had a spa in it. They moved all of that onto the roof level. It was a beautiful setting. They had about 75 stations that were now up on the roof level. Looked fantastic. The problem is the exit requirements couldn't be met for 75 people, so they had a fire safety code violation. So it's important to bring all those pieces together. The people that are looking at the health of your building, the ventilation systems, the water systems, the EHS, the occupational safety. How are we looking at what happens to our staff that are in these, food safety, and then the life safety. Next slide, please. So for UL, when we go out, and really this is across the third-party inspection industry, whether it's UL or any of the other ones out there, we're really drawing all from the same base documents, whether it's the World Health Organization, the CDC here in the United States, the EPA, FDA, lots of different organizations at the federal level. Then also industry organizations such as ASHRAE for ventilation systems and the mechanical systems of a building, to building codes and fire codes. And then on top of all of that, if you're a global brand, you have to also look at what your local country requirements are, whether they be in Europe or Asia or South America, the Middle East. They may all have slightly different approaches. The goal is the same, to keep people safe. But you want to make sure you partner with a third-party audit team that can take that global perspective of best practices from industry, from regulatory agencies on the global scale, as well as then incorporate in local country requirements to put together your safe to sleep playbook. You'll have your corporate level requirements. If you've got franchise properties, they may also have their own corporate level. How do you mesh those together into a single consistent global approach to healthy buildings in the time of a pandemic? Jody, I think I stole your words. You use global, consistent for confidence, but that's really what we're talking about is how do you take all of these different organizations that have a regulatory piece and combine them into a program that works for your organization. Next slide, please. So to do that, when you're interviewing companies, whether you're interviewing or looking at UL as a potential partner for your audits and certification of locations, ask some questions. And we get this all the time from potential clients. Some are really good about asking these. Sometimes we have to say, here's some things we ought to consider. So what areas do you cover? There are groups out there that are really good at looking at building systems, but really don't understand the operations side of things people do or the staff would do. So ask what areas are covered, going back to those 4 topics I just talked about and how they can cover those topics. Do they have expertise in those areas? Is a phased approach possible? I'm talking with a potential client right now. Their first approach was to talk to an auditing agency, and they had just one way of doing it. It was their way or no way. And really, that's I believe not the way to approach this. There's a phased approach where I think if you look at policies and procedures that you've set in place from a corporate level, look for gaps there first. If you identify gaps in policies and procedures that you want to follow, correct those. Once those have been corrected, then the second phase is really the audits of the properties. You want to then go out and make sure you've given the right guidance of policy and procedures, and then they have a chance to implement the correct ones, all of them, without the gaps. And then you want to give them some time before you start to go out and audit and hold them accountable for that. Ask if there's a certification label that can be used when compliance is verified. There are a number of third-party agencies around the world that do offer some type of label or certificate that can be shared with the property, that once it's been audited, that can indicate that they've met a certain level of compliance. Some locations really aren't interested in having that visual indicator or verification label to use. So it's really up to your organization. What's important? At a minimum, for everybody, the important is how do we take care of our people? How do we take care of our guests? If it's something you want to shout out to the world at a corporate level, then maybe that certification label is important. But ask how long that label is good for. There are some organizations that will allow that label to be used for a year, provided there are quarterly or interim audits. And sometimes that surprises the brands that are using them. So you want to make sure you understand how you can use it, how long you can use it, and what's the interim requirements for verification during that period of time. Ask how information is collected and shared. We talked with a client recently that their auditors collected a lot of information, similar to the 750 questions that UL asks on our audits, but they did a terrible job of presenting it. They could tell individual hotels, but they couldn't really understand from their dashboard that was created how they paired up in regions or globally. So ask them how the information is collected and who they share it with. And then what levels of each organization can see different levels of the information. Next slide, please. I'll go through these really quick. You want to make sure you've got a checklist or a playbook that outlines what's the condition you're looking at, what are the elements that you do or look at to measure that. I've talked about some of the examples in the past, so we'll continue on with that. But be aware that these are some of the typical problems we're seeing in hotels right now. Next slide. Okay, really quickly then, the bottom here is the goal: protect staff, clients, and protect brand reputation. A lot of our clients, they like our advisory services and our audits, whether they're in-person or virtual audits, because it keeps them on track day to day. But more importantly, if something happens, if there's a crisis that occurs, then your crisis management plan goes into effect. And one of the first things you're going to say is, we've partnered with an outside group to look at our operations. All that work to get up to speed is already done, and UL or your other third party should be a partner in your crisis management plan should something happen in one of your properties somewhere in the world. Next slide, please. That's our overview in a nutshell. My email is there. I tell people, client or not, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions or give an opinion on how to approach a problem you might have. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to take a slightly different approach and welcome questions from the audience.
Certainly. Thank you all to all of the speakers, Charlie, Jody, and Mike. We do have some questions. I had a question, but I'm going to defer it because there was another question that came in. Tanya usually monitors these and moderates these questions, but due to time, I'm going to go ahead and do that. The first question is for Jody. There are two questions, Jody. The first one, what is the biggest event you have scheduled and when? And the second part to that question is, do you have updated meeting floor plans with social distancing layouts for meeting planners to see online?
Okay, so yeah, two great questions. And I see that one of my colleagues, Kate, jumped in and answered one of them. Thanks, Kate. So we are booking meetings really of all different shapes and sizes right now. There's no limitation to that unless we're following state guidelines. So I'm booking something right now at our Grand Hyatt Baha Mar for 2021, and that happens to be a meeting series of about 120 people. We've held a meeting of 500 at our Hyatt Regency Orlando. So it's anything that our client needs, we'll meet you there. And I would just expect that there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation about what the needs are and what the guidelines are going to be. What was the second part of that question? Oh, it was about the diagrams. You know, this question was asked of our Senior Vice President of Meetings and Events on a call last week. And I'm glad I was there to hear it so I can answer appropriately. We really don't want social distancing to be one of these trends that stays around forever. Simply because, you know, how long can we possibly sustain 100 people in a 20,000 square foot ballroom as a business model, right? So we don't really want to take the time to redesign all of the diagrams right now for our websites, but we do use a system called Social Tables. And Social Tables is kind of more of an on-demand system. So if you have 20 people, and we have the square footage, we'll sit with you and we'll map that out and you'll be able to see that floor plan prior to making your decision. So there are ways to do it. We're just avoiding right now making the permanent changes.
Great. Thank you so much, Jody. And we have time for this last question. If you do have any other questions, please put them in the chat box. And again, we will respond to those questions by email and also in the GBTA Think Tank site. So the question that I had, and this is directed to you, Mike, for those of us who are buyers, what questions should we be asking hotels within our RFPs that we may not be asking now?
I think some of the key questions to ask right now are, do you have updated policies and procedures for illness prevention in the hotel? What changes have taken place? What procedures have been updated? Where is your plan, and can we see it prior to making our booking with your hotel? You want to ask them what changes have taken place in catering operations, housekeeping operations, meetings and event spaces. What's been changed, and how does that impact the level of safety in your property?
Awesome. And certainly those are things that we have not asked in the past, or at least I have not. So I want to thank everyone that has joined us today. Thank you to Jody Fernandez, Mike Halligan, and of course, our own Charlie Brapone. This was an excellent call today, and thank you for all of the information. I hope all of you have gotten something out of it, particularly you buyers, and then also to suppliers. There may be some standards here that you may want to implement or at least discuss with your upper management about incorporating. So again, we are grateful to you. We will have you again on our next biweekly call, which is in 2 weeks. I believe that is our September 3rd. You will receive an invitation, and the topic is TBD on that topic. And then on the 17th, we will be having a call on our airport operations. So again, have a great afternoon, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Take care.